Welcome to the Kidlit Club with Sally Rippon and Adrian Beck.
Hello everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Kidlit Club. I'm Adrian Beck and I'm joined by the wonderful Sally Rippon.
Sally Rippon, and we have another guest on today's show too.
Do we ever? We have a very, very special guest.
He's very special.
He's actually just hiding down the bottom of the shot there.
Very sleepy. This
comes.
is my new baby because I wasn't busy enough as it is. I needed a puppy in my life.
This is little Billy.
And do you know why? Because all my children are so big. I've got 2 living overseas. I've got 1 about to start year 10. So I needed another baby in the house.
That's
because
right.
all the parents out there who are getting their kids ready for school and sending them off to kindergarten, you know, they're going through all this little children angst, and I just wanted to be a part of that. So Billy is that
There
little
he
person
is.
for me.
Look at him.
Hi.
Oh, so cute. And what kind of, I'm not a dog expert, so you'll have to help me out here. What kind of breed is Billy?
He is a King Charles Cavalier.
Yep.
And they were bred primarily to keep people warm. So they used to sit on the laps of ladies in coaches in the time of King Charles. And they were his favourite pets. And they really are just pretty much this is what they do. A lot of the time they just sit on your lap. And
Keep you
they're pretty
warm.
Adorable.
Cute.
Very entertaining. So he will get bigger. So as the show progresses, we might
Yes.
bring him on again as he gets bigger.
Right. We'll see him morph into... How big will he get?
Probably about twice this size. So
Okay.
he's still 9 weeks.
Yeah.
And still very much a little baby.
Yes, he
But
is.
yeah,
Hello, little mate.
he's not going to get much bigger than that. No.
And
Yeah.
he's got a bell on at the moment because... why does he have the bell on?
Well, because he's so little that when he follows you around the house, you don't know where he is. And I have been known to accidentally almost step on him. So the little bell makes sure that that doesn't happen.
Oh, that's
And so
good.
I know where he is in all places.
Cute. Fair enough. That
Yep.
can be a process. Now, you mentioned that it's school time. Well, school has well and truly gone back by now. It's just gone back. And obviously, what I think about when I think about school is the school readers. Do you remember the school readers, Sal?
I remember them when I even remember my school readers when I was growing up. And I used to love them because I actually found reading quite easy. And so I didn't mind going through them because I progressed pretty quickly onto some what felt like more interesting books with plot lines and characters. But I think the tricky thing about a lot of school readers is because they have to be written so that kids can learn language at a specific rate, and they have to be accessible to all readers, but a lot of them are so boring. And so for some children who take a little while to learn to read, it can actually put them off reading. It can be really problematic. But I think there are more and more writers who are aiming to fill in that gap to create books that are maybe just one step up from a reader. That's certainly what I was going for with Billy B. Brown. But if you think of the Ginger Green series, what are some others that you can think of the top of your head?
I was going to mention that my daughter, as well as doing the school readers and Billy B. Brown, which is one of her favourites, she also reads Dogman. So Dogman is a graphic novel, as a lot of us would know, by the Captain Underpants author.
Dave Pilkey.
That's right.
Yep.
And obviously it's all comic strip all the way through, and it's colourful and it's exciting, and a lot of fun, silly things happen. It's very funny. And you can sort of work out what
Yeah.
you're meant to be reading
From
by
the
the pictures.
context.
Yeah.
Yeah, comics definitely are really good. And I found my youngest son, because by grade 2 he was really still struggling to read, and we realised he's dyslexic, that then he graduated from something like Dogman right onto Japanese manga as well, for the
great.
very same reason that you get
Yeah.
really good storytelling,
Yeah.
character development, but the context is provided in the illustrations because kids understand much more than they're able to read. By the time they start school, they're already got a really great grasp of the world. They're often watching television programs and movies, so they understand storylines and characters.
Yeah.
And then they go to read books, and it's, this is a dog, this is a cat.
Yes.
No wonder they're not interested,
Yeah.
and they're saying, I hate reading. And
Yeah.
so, I definitely think there's still a challenge out there for other writers to keep writing really good stuff
Yeah.
for kids who struggle to read or who are
Yeah.
just learning to read.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'd love to hear from anybody out there that's got some other ideas for books that are good early readers.
Good early reader tips. That would be great. Yeah, let us know or post a comment. That would be really interesting to know. The other thing when it comes to school readers is, I'm not sure if you were the same or if you would recommend doing the same thing, but we like to separate the school readers from just reading for pleasure, because we read every night to the girls, and we do it just because it's fun. They love it, we love it, and we just think it's a great sort of a pattern to be in. But I would not use the school readers just before bed. When you're meant to be sort of calming down and enjoying a nice story. I think school readers, I mean, it's tough being a parent, as we all know, but you've got to find another time to read the school readers, because it's not always reading for enjoyment, and I think you do need to separate the two.
Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because you don't want children to feel like reading is a chore, and you don't want them to think that reading is just something they have to do for school or homework. There's got to be joy and pleasure involved in it as well, and that's definitely where reading to kids comes into its own, because you can also read something quite complex too. You could read Charlotte's Web, or you could read Roald Dahl. So they do understand story and character, and they're excited to listen to the next chapter. Their listening faculties are really developed, but the reading faculty is much behind, and that doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
It takes them a while to catch up, to read what it is that the kind of stories that they're interested in. So that's where reading aloud, I think, is vital, because it keeps them engaged in storytelling, helps them realize that if they keep persisting with these readers that can be sometimes not the most fascinating, that then they can graduate onto more interesting books. I reckon The Pigeons is another really great example of maybe the next level up from Dogman. Would you say? Would your girls be reading?
They love The Pigeons. Yeah, they find that really, really funny and fun to read, and it's almost like Dogman is at one end of the graphic novel scale, and then you've got something like perhaps even Billy B. Brown, which is more your traditional story, but in the middle you've probably got Real Pigeons, which is sort of a mixture of both, which is great. So the girls love that too. So
great.
Yeah. And do you like Dogman, Billy? I reckon you'd like Dogman.
I reckon he'd probably chew on Dogman. I could probably give him a copy of Dogman instead of my finger right now. It'd be slightly less painful.
Well, welcome to the team. You're our little Kid Lit Club mascot, Billy. So we're glad to have you on board. On today's episode, I'm so excited about today's episode for two reasons. Firstly, because we've got the incredible Matt Larkin, who we're going to be chatting to, who wrote The Orchard Underground.
Yeah, which has been really popular.
It has.
Yeah, I think quite a lot of bookstores have been using it as a book club book. I know the Little Book Room has.
They have. Yeah,
so it'd be great to chat with him.
Absolutely. But secondly, this is why I'm really excited, because it's the debut of a brand new segment, The Rippin' Report.
He came up with that idea, by the way.
The Rippin' Report.
Yep.
So Sally is going out and about, and you never quite know who she's going to talk to.
I'm often not quite sure either until the day, but that's what's going to keep it exciting, right?
So we're not even sure right now what's going to be in the Rippin' Report until it happens.
Yep.
So you have to keep listening and watching to find out.
Yeah, it'll be like breaking news in Kids Lit.
That's coming up later. Actually, why don't we do it right now?
Great.
The Rippin' Report.
The Rippin' Report. And on this edition, Sally goes behind the scenes with Leesa at the Little Book Room.
I'm here with one of my most favourite people in the world. She knows that already. Leesa Lambert from the Little Book Room. If you don't know who she is already, where have you been living? If you're serious about children's books, you will know all about Leesa Lambert. But for those of you who may not know Melbourne icon, Leesa, can you tell us a little bit about what the store is, when it started, who started it? Tell us about the Little Book Room.
It would be my pleasure, Sally.
Great.
Thank you for having me on today. The Little Book Room is Australia's oldest children's bookstore. It was founded in 1960 by a young man named Albert Allen. He had just been travelling around Europe, following his passion for art and literature, with a particular focus in European fairy tales. And
didn't know that.
When he came back to Melbourne, he decided that it was time. There are a few really extraordinary children's bookstores in America at the time, but he thought that Melbourne needed its own children's book specialist. So on the 13th of October 1960, it was a Friday, he opened the doors to a tiny little shop in Equitable Place in the CBD, and it was a buzz thanks to a wonderful article published in The Age that morning. Albert ran the bookshop incredibly successfully for many, many years. So along with this support from school and public librarians and families, he was able to expand to the point where there were 5 little book rooms in the heyday.
I didn't know that.
I know.
Just in the inner city or in the
Yes,
suburbs?
and
as
for a
well?
little while there was a shop in Geelong. So a lot of people remember the Toorak shop or the South Yarra shop. And
So what era are we talking?
in the 80s.
Yeah, that was the boom of kids lit in Australia, I think. It was a good time to be working in kids lit.
And Australian
Yeah, so
literature as
much
well.
great
That's
stuff.
when Albert really started deepening his collection of original illustrations from
we're
Australia's
talking-
picture bookmakers.
And James,
we're talking.
Bob Graham, Lee Hobbs, all those iconic writer-illustrators.
Well, it's thanks to him that the National Gallery of Victoria now has a collection representative of the finest illustrators in Australia over the last 50 years. He donated his bequeathed.
That'll-
He gave his
Yeah,
collection
yeah.
to the NGV,
Yeah.
and it's the only one of its type in Australia.
It's pretty special.
So we took over the Little Book Room in 2008. My parents, Ian and Leslie, and I.
10 years last year.
Yeah.
Did I know that? Maybe I didn't.
We were a bit exhausted at the time. Maybe we didn't quite make the fuss we should have.
Maybe that was around about the time of the Kids Book Festival too. So
That was
potentially
all
that
in the
was yeah, I get
genesis.
it. So cool.
It was so cool. You were a star, Sally, an absolutely shining bright
I let
star.
my funnies out.
Yes, we had laughs, and I was.
I told my first poo joke in public. It was amazing. Brought the house down.
Oh my gosh, it's all coming back
Lisa's
to me.
face was like,
Just some things you just don't expect in life.
for me.
The guys from the City of Yarra Library Service came along and supported that event. And the next week approached me and said, how about we do it again
so
in
good.
partnership?
Yeah.
So they have very wonderfully already booked the whole entire Fitzroy Town Hall for
Wow.
Saturday, October the 12th. Bigger and better.
Yeah.
But only thanks to the support of the people that came along to our first Kids Book Fest and the extraordinary authors and illustrators that generously gave up their time and supported this pretty wacky idea, really.
Oh, but it's such an important thing to do as well, because it does feel like, if we really want to engage kids with reading, we've got to get them excited about books. And, that's what you do, and you just live and breathe kids' books.
I think that children's booksellers are a special breed.
Yeah.
They're completely obsessed. We have this incredible depth of knowledge, but really what makes a great children's bookseller is somebody who will listen and is able to communicate the
I
right
think
match.
it's a great way of thinking about it.
So we're matchmakers.
You are. That is so true in so many ways.
And sometimes that's about talking to grandparents
Yeah.
about kind of a generation
Yep.
gap and helping them get in. Sometimes it's about talking to parents about reading aloud with their 8-year-old. And if you go into a department store, you're just not going to get that range, let alone the advice.
And I think even people who think, oh, why can't I just get it online? It's because I guess a lot of adult books get a lot of media coverage anyway. There's a lot of word of mouth around, what's the summer read or so forth. And plus adults are reading books for themselves. But how many parents, teachers, librarians get a chance to read a wealth of children's books? And that's where, when you come into a children's bookstore, you're chatting with people who are reading books that are classics, that have been around forever, and they know what the new ones are, they know what this kind of reader likes, what this age group will get into, what are fashions with kids. There isn't anybody who has that kind of expertise like a children's bookseller, and it really is the idea of a city without specialist children's bookstores just feels like a place I wouldn't want to live.
It's really true, Sally. There's an enormous gap in the media when it comes to reviewing children's books. And
We're doing
it's
our best
not
right
fair.
here.
Yeah, it is a really important project.
It's true.
That you're working on. Things are a bit better in the UK and the US.
Yeah,
so
right.
hopefully we'll jump on those coattails
That's
a
good
little.
to know.
But Yeah, there's so much to share, and
Yeah.
we really bat above our weight in terms
It's
of
amazing.
standard for our population.
Yeah.
I'm so proud.
We have so much to be proud of.
Yes, so much.
So thank you, Leesa. You really are a gem. And have a look at the Little Book Room online. Sign up to the newsletter. Look out for the Kids Book Festival, because last year it went off,
was
and it sounds
crazy.
like this year it's going to be crazier.
Thank you,
So
Sally.
Thank you.
That was a beauty.
Did you like it?
I loved it. And I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to more Rip and Reports every so often.
Yeah, I really enjoy it actually, because I think one of the things I like most is to find out the way that other people approach writing, and to get a little bit behind the scenes and to work out other people that are doing interesting things out there in the kids lit world. So yeah, that will be my investigative hat
I like
that I shall
it.
bring to the show.
I like it. Scoop.
Yeah.
Sally Scoop.
Yeah.
But it may not be writers, it could be publishers,
Yeah.
it could be anyone involved in Kidlit in any way, I
Yeah,
guess.
I think anyone in the industry, and I'm really interested in things that are topical as well. So as we mentioned in the last episode, do let us know if there's people you want to hear from, and I will
Yeah.
do my best to get onto them.
Put them in the Rip and Report.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Or the Sally Scoop. You know, we can keep brainstorming this one.
Okay, now it's time for this.
Social Media Watch.
Social Media Watch. That's right. That's when we have a look at what's happening on social media in terms of Kidlit. And I want to take you to something that I noticed. Now, this was a couple of months ago now, a few months back, but I thought we'd get your take on it. So J.K. Rowling, she is a bit of a big deal.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you would know her books, right? That's a really bad joke.
I like
But
it.
we're going to go with it anyway.
It's better than my stuff. And she recently, as I said, a few months back, put out some tips for writing, so her golden tips for writing. And I thought I might run some by you, Sal, see what your
Okay.
thoughts are on
All
them.
right, see if JK
See if she
and I are
knows-
aligned.
Yes,
Yep.
see if we're on the same page.
All
But
right.
before we get to that, the other thing that the Pottermore website put out as a tweet, which you might have heard of as well. Now, the Pottermore website is obviously all about Harry Potter. The tweet that they put out was the following. This is also very interesting and highbrow. Hogwarts didn't always have bathrooms. Before adopting Muggle plumbing methods in the 18th century, witches and wizards simply relieved themselves wherever they stood and vanished the evidence.
Amazing. That's when magic could really come in handy. And I think with the puppy, I'd love to be vanishing a bit of his evidence every now and then.
You could just do a little bit of...
What's the old paper towel for me at the moment, unfortunately. But did you know in castles before, and I can't tell you which era this is because I'm terrible with history, but before they had plumbing in castles, people would go behind tapestries, and ladies would walk around in those big puffy dresses that they did,
Yeah.
just lift up their skirt, you know, pop in behind the tapestry and just do their little deposit there. And there was no magic involved. It's probably just some very poorly paid
Wow.
cleaner.
You don't see that in Game of Thrones, though, do you?
Maybe that's in the outtakes.
Yeah, maybe it is. Maybe it is. Well, I thought that was very interesting.
Yeah.
And it's what's your take on continuously sort of updating people on sort of the smaller minor details of a world you've created? Like, what do you think about that?
Yeah.
Some have said maybe that was TMI, too much information.
I think with the Harry Potter series, they're obsessives. Like, I remember driving past Prince's Park last year and watching full-grown people playing Quidditch and thinking, whoa, this is when a book series has really gone out into the world. So I
Yeah.
think when you've grown up with it and you love it, it is almost like part of your childhood and part of your world. And so why not find out, you know, what kind of pets they would have growing up, or what kind of toilets they would have used. I think that's fascinating.
It's a bit of fun.
Yeah, it is really fun. And I think, you know, people are constantly looking for more and more content. So, yeah, really, you could come up with anything, couldn't you?
Good. And that begs the question too, Polly and Buster, your hugely successful series, that's obviously a magical series.
Yeah.
Do they do the same sort of thing when it comes to, do they just...
Yeah, I'll have to give that some thought, actually, because
Okay.
I can't look like I'm copying JK.
No,
yeah,
true.
Yeah.
Okay, good response. But what I
Maybe they
wanted to...
don't poo in my world. It's that magic.
They don't poo in my world, so it's...
Quote.
I like it. Also what JK put out though was the tips for writing, and I thought I'd run a couple by you, and as I said, see if you're aligned. She put out a whole bunch of different tips, but I'll pick out a few. The first one is that she doesn't have 10 rules that guarantee success, even though she's got some rules that are supposed to help,
Yeah.
that don't guarantee success. Do you
Yeah.
think is there any one rule that's really going to help you, Sally, or what's your take on that?
I think that's pretty important, isn't it? That you got to find what works for you, because I think I used to teach writing for children at university,
Yeah.
and I think that a lot of people would turn up wanting to know what is the secret. How do you become a successful published author? But there actually isn't. It is hard work.
There's no
it is
secret.
persistent. The secret is there's no secret.
Yeah.
And the secret is that you
You're
have
heading.
to. I know, it's like very meta.
It's an inception.
Yeah. But you have to find your own way too.
Yeah.
And I do think part of that is really reading other books on writing, going to hear other writers speak, because some things will connect with you. Listening to other people's tips and ideas, and something will think, oh yeah, that's what I do, or I might try that. But in the end, it's like a thumbprint. Everybody is their own writer, really. You can't mimic the way that anybody else does something.
Yeah.
But you're a writer too. I mean, what do you find useful for you? Do you have strategies, or does each book you approach happen in a different way?
Yeah. Oh no, not really. I'd probably approach most of the stuff I do in exactly the same way. But I think you're right. I think you might go to a talk, or you might listen to a podcast, for example, and you might hear like 5 tips, and only 2 of them will be appropriate to you. But as long as those 2 work for you, then that's great. You've learnt something and you've improved your process. So I think you've got to pick and choose your advice.
Yeah, definitely. What resonates with you.
Yeah. So just a couple more from J.K. Rowling,
great.
apart from ignore everything she says, is discipline. Most moments of pure inspiration are glorious, but for most of a writer's life, it's perspiration rather than inspiration that gets you by.
Yeah.
True or false, Sally Rippon?
Definitely. There is a mix. Like, there's a really beautiful TED Talk that I'm sure a lot of people have heard of, that Elizabeth Gilbert did years ago about the muse. And there is something in that sometimes you'll just feel like ideas are just flowing through you. But unless you're at your desk, where are they going to go? Yeah. And so I think of it a little bit like a race. If you're an Olympic athlete, you wouldn't just turn up on race day and expect to run your best 100 metres.
Yeah.
You have to have been training for weeks and months ahead of time, and so that's what putting the hours in does. And then, very different to Olympic athlete, whatever you put down in your first draft is going to be rubbish anyway. You're just sketching out what your ideas are, and then the real work comes in, turning that into something that's publishable.
Absolutely.
That's the process. That's where the sweat comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
And the commitment.
Sometimes I sort of think that the inspiration happens right at the start.
Yeah.
And then everything after that is just hard work.
Yeah, that's right. And lucky you have that first bit, because otherwise it would just be
hard work.
really hard. And plus you're on your own a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You and your pup.
Yeah, that's right. You and little Billy.
Yeah, that's right.
These little Bell.
That's right.
And a couple more from JK. In fact, the last one that I wanted to talk about, the second last one, rejection is part of the process. You've got to have resilience and be humble. So Sally, rejection. Sally Rippon, hugely successful superstar of Australian Kidlit. Do you have any experience with rejection at all?
Okay, so...
I'm saying no.
Well, very sweet of you to call me a superstar, but I was a struggling writer, as a lot of people are, for 15 years before the Billy books were published.
15?
Yeah, and really on many occasions wasn't sure if I could keep going with it, because it was...
Really?
Yeah, because... I would get books published and then they'd go out of print, or you'd put all your heart and soul into something and it just wouldn't be something in the world in the way that you wanted it to.
Yeah.
And that's very, very daunting. That is a kind of rejection, but the initial rejection, sure, happens all the time. It doesn't matter how good your piece is. Sometimes the timing is not right, or the publisher can't find a place for it, or there's too much. It's saturated the market at the moment. That publishers have to make sure what they produce is sellable as well.
Yeah.
And people think that that's cynical, but that's their role. And because they do that so well, it allows you to be the creative one, and wear the crown and be out in the world and look at me, look what I do. But they have to sell the book. And so they have to make those calls, whether they take a risk with something that is a little bit edgy, or they go with the tried and true. So they take a lot of those risks. So part of the rejection is not taking it too personally, I think.
Okay.
Sometimes you have to, sometimes you just have to admit, maybe that wasn't my best work. But, that is part of it. Okay, well, this one isn't right for right now. So just keep writing until, you get the one that is the one that sings. And for me, that was, 40 books in. It was the Billy B. Brown series.
40 books in?
Something like that, because I illustrated for a long time as well for other people.
Wow.
So I think it's important to remember that, the overnight success is a long process.
It's a long night.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
14 years of
well, that's
sleep.
right, 14 years.
Yeah.
How
I think
close?
it was about 14 years. No, maybe a bit less, maybe 10. But still a lot, yeah.
But it was a bit of a roller coaster. So how close were you to ever giving up?
Really close.
Were you really?
Yeah, I was teaching at RMIT and I love teaching,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed my classes, and I thought, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to teach writing. And
not necessarily write for a living, but teach writing for a living.
Yeah, and also just take the pressure off my writing too, because that is one of the struggles that I think a lot of writers out there will feel as well, is that when you put so much energy into, and this being your career, puts a lot of pressure on your work too. So I thought if I had a steady income coming from another source, that was my career, and I wrote on the side, it would take some pressure off myself too. So it's finding the balance of how to create something that will sell but is true to you, that will reach a really wide audience but is unique at the same time, and no one can guess what that is, or otherwise they'd all be doing it. And, publishers are always looking for the next thing that will be the bestseller. But you don't know until it's out there. No one knew that Billy would be successful. We thought we'd maybe do 6 books if we were really on a roll. Yeah, 6 books, amazing.
Great.
Yeah, and we went on to do 20 and then 20 Jacks and Mysteries and Adventures, and no one guessed that. It's changed everything for me now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wouldn't be doing this right now. You wouldn't even know who I was.
Well, I mean, it's all come down to this point, really. I mean, that's why you do it, so you can sit here and talk about it.
Chat with Adrian,
Oh, well, that's very interesting. So resilience is a huge part of it. 14 years persistence,
commitment,
and then finally something really went gangbusters. But if you hadn't have been so resilient, who knows? It's great. Okay, and the last thing that JK says is courage.
Yeah.
Fear of failure is the saddest reason on earth not to do what you're meant to do.
Yeah.
So
nice.
Do you still, when you send in your latest manuscripts and all that sort of stuff, even though you've got to where you are now, which is amazing, do you still have that little voice in the back of your mind saying, what if this isn't any good?
Oh, it's terrifying.
Really?
It doesn't matter how many books you have out there, every one of them, because you do put so much of yourself into it. And I think of Polly and Buster, for example. I'm about to release book 3 out into the world, and literally the weekend before it was about to be sent off to the printer, I'm sending panicked emails off to my publisher saying, I'm not happy with it, can I just have a few more days, and let me just go over it and just twist the tone around a little bit.
Really?
But according to her, that's also very normal, so I'm just putting it out there that it's a really personal thing to put a book out in the world. I mean, really it is everything, you exposing yourself in a way, everything you care about is on those pages. And so that's why the rejection feels really scary. But you just have to, I guess, have faith that you spend as much time with it as you can, that you trust your publishers have got it to be really polished. And it's terrifying. I'm, still nervous about when it actually comes out, that people will like it.
I think they might think it's okay. I've got a feeling. Well, that's courage. Well, they're the tips from JK, and I think we're, you and JK are pretty much on the same page with a lot of that stuff, so that's very interesting. Maybe we should listen to you both. Who knows?
Thanks, Adrian.
Okay, now it's time for this.
Our special guest.
Special guest time. And this episode we have none other than Matt Larkin, who wrote The Orchard Underground.
Which is such a wonderful book, and I've been really wanting to chat with him about it. So this was a great opportunity.
Okay, here's Sally with Matt.
So one of the things I really wanted to do on the Kid Lip Club videocast is introduce some brand new talent. And this person sitting next to me here you've been on the scene for a little while, writing secretly.
I've been under the table a while. I've had a pseudonym or two, but now I'm here on my own.
With this amazing book that's done really, really well. I'm so thrilled that I've just come off the back of this. It does feel like having just come off a wild train adventure.
Wow. Did you finish it today?
This morning.
So exciting.
I know, so
good.
I'm still a little bit buzzing. And it really is a ride. I mean, that's just the perfect way to describe it, because it's not a world I've entered before. It's kind of almost hallucinogenic in its Blyton.
One of the first, in fact, the very first review it ever got in Books and Publishing, the final words of the review were, it was nearly too fantastical. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to write. That was the only criticism they had of the book, and I thought it perfectly encapsulated what I want. It's real. There's nothing in here that couldn't probably happen, but it's not very likely that it would happen. So there's no unicorns or ghosts or sexy vampires, but there's stuff that probably you couldn't do, but you couldn't prove that you couldn't do it. So that's what I want. Nearly too fantastic.
So Matt, what I'd be really interested to know is which of the characters are you, or what part of you are in the characters?
I think they're all me.
Yeah.
It's like everyone in your dreams is you. You know, when you have a dream, every single character in that dream is you, and it's the same when you write a book. Every character is you, except that some of them are me the way I wish I was,
Yeah.
and some of them are more me the way I probably am or appear to other people. So the main, or the protagonist of the book is Attica Stone. She's where is she? There she is.
Yeah.
She appears in this town and she kicks everything off. She's our person that makes stuff happen. Our main character, Pre-Coley here, he's the guy that's lived in the town the longest. He's a kid who was the first kid in town. He's the face of the town. He's on all the promotional materials for this new development. But he's really quite a passive character, and that's really quite a lot how I was when I was a kid. So Pre's probably the closest one to the me that my sister would recognise.
Right.
Then there's Slot Car, who's
Crazy.
she's just the weirdest kid who you've ever met. She thinks on an entirely different dimension to everybody else, and everybody thinks she's talking nonsense, but usually there's a message somewhere deep in it, which if you listen to it, and I feel this way with weirdos really passionately,
Yes.
listen to weirdos. Weirdos know what they're talking about, except not always. But when a weirdo tells you something that's really bizarre, listen, because there's often a little pearl of wisdom underneath, and that's who Slot Car is.
And I know there'll be a lot of writers watching this. They would love to know a little bit about your background, because this feels like a pretty strong entry into
Oh,
writing
thank you.
for kids. So I'm
Wow.
assuming that you've been writing for a while.
Look, I've been writing since I was about 8.
Yeah.
So, and the first things I wrote were notes to my mum, which were generally lies about what had happened to my jeans that day.
Your jeans?
Yeah, no, I literally have a letter to my mum that I wrote when I was 8,
Yeah.
which says, "Dear Mum, this piece of my jeans fell off. Would you please fix it for me? Love, Matt."
Aw.
And which she did. And it had a little, the only reason I know that the piece was in there was there's a little outline that I'd drawn around there. It was like a belt loop or something.
Yeah.
I don't know what I did, but it was almost certainly playing with scissors or something, but there's no way that piece of my jeans fell off. So telling stories and getting away with it is something I've always liked doing. And then I encountered stories that I loved and copied those terribly and then copied them better. And then
Can you give us
copied
some
them more.
examples?
Yeah, so The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Yeah.
Guide to the Galaxy, I copied that terribly when I was a kid. Even like Judy Blume, and some other,
I lived
some of
up
the
to-
really great middle grade. I also missed plenty. I discovered that I was more fascinated even by my parents' bookshelf than I was by the kids' bookshelf.
Yeah, me too.
And I try and bring that into the writing that I do. So I don't want my kids to read like Enid Blyton characters. I love Enid Blyton, fine, for all the problems that Enid had.
They are a bit like puppets, aren't they?
Yeah, a little bit. And all the kind of gee golly whiz, I don't like that very much. So there's a scene in my novel right towards the end where the kids swear. And they have to swear because they see a thing which, if you saw it, you would swear.
Yeah.
And so I didn't want my kids to go, "Gosh, isn't that just wizard?" Instead, I wanted them to really swear. So I have the pattern of swearing, but I replace it with square brackets.
Can
with
I read
something
that
else.
little bit?
Would you
'Cause
like
it's actually hilarious.
Yeah,
It's one of my favourite
one
bits.
of
I
the
think
sort
I
of
can.
second laugh chapter.
Should I just read from the beginning?
I think you can. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's just
Do you,
let people.
no, you do it. 'Cause
Oh, you
it's
want me
your
to do it?
voice.
Okay,
yeah, yeah.
fine.
Just why am I going to
All
read
right.
your book? What's going on here?
All right. I haven't read this in a while. Let's see if I find it funny.
Okay.
So this section is right near the very end of this book. You can see we're right at the
It
end.
doesn't give too much away. It's just to kind of give the idea.
I'm going to skirt around a couple of things,
good idea.
but we'll see. Because there's a big, like literally, this page is the biggest giveaway in the entire book.
Yeah,
So
but we're not
this
gonna
page
read
is the one that comes, but after it, let's
Yeah.
see if I can manage not to spoil my
All
own
right.
book. Here we go. Chapter 34, The River. Everything is black. Everything is loud and black. Everything is loud and very dark grey. Everything is loud and damp and now a kind of dirty whooshing brown that is, if anything, more alarming than the dark grey and makes me long for the good old days of the black. That's my Douglas Adams and Terry
Love
Pratchett
it.
showing that's shamelessly grabbed. Something grabs my wrist and now everything is vibrating rock, thick sound, dirty water and something punching me in the soles of my feet that I eventually realise is the spiral stairway leading up to the House of Doors, which I'm apparently climbing. Attica Stone is yanking me up, and under the wild ocean of noise chasing us from below, I can hear her uttering a continuous stream of some of the foulest swears that I know, and some I don't. It's quite nice, really, like whale song. Slotcar and Evan are climbing behind me. "Oh, hi," I say. "Whale song," yells Attica. "Cool," I say. What's going on?" "Just whale songing climb," explains Evan. "Okay," I say happily, and do. We are up from the door in the floor, and I go lie down. because that feels nice. Not dolphin calling yet, yells Attica, dragging me out onto the cliff top. I don't know where that seagull noises sloth ended up. We have to check. Sloth? I say. A funny memory is gnawing at my mind. In it, there's a sloth driving a little train. He gives me a wave. All the passengers are... I'm going to redact that. They wave too. Ram and Glue are outside the house. What the... very large ocean liner foghorn is happening, Ram sobs. Oh, hi, Ram. I don't know, I say. Get down here, says Attica. She yanks me down on all fours with her, and she, Slotcar, Evan and I crawl to the edge of the cliff and peer over. Wow, that's a nice view, I say. The valley spreads out before us, from the gap between the hills to the clearing and the rasy wood.
I think we have to stop there. We're
dude,
giving too much
there's
away.
there's nothing else I can read here.
Stop.
All of this is
You got to read it to
secret.
find out why that's so important.
I'm going to have banana bread to
Please
congratulate
do.
myself for that reading.
Yeah. No, it was good. And I just wanted you to see that because I think it's just one of the ways that you play with language and you make it so that... I think one of the things I love about children's writing is anticipating your reader really coming in and filling the gap and being able to guess what it is that you mean without you having to write it. Like I remember Andy Griffith saying to me once that the funniest thing to read was not I was walking along and a flying cow pooed on my head, but I was walking along and saw a flying cow and felt something drop on my head. So you actually leave the space for the kid to fill. Or start with the
poo on the head and work backwards.
Yeah.
If you can tell it in a way that creates a mystery.
Yeah.
And the balance with middle grade, I think, depending on the age of your audience within middle grade, is creating mysteries that are intriguing without being completely baffling.
Yeah.
If your reader doesn't have any idea what's going on, they'll stop. So you have to give them a lot, but not everything.
So one of the things that I really liked about reading this book is that it has a real feel of country and nature as being this kind of paradise, lost paradise. Can you tell us a little bit about that and tell us a little bit, is there anything in your childhood that relates to?
Yeah, it is essentially based on a story from my own childhood. So this town is a brand new town. It's only been there 10 years. And this child, Pri, was the first kid to live in the first house on the first street of this brand new town. And it's been growing up around him, demolishing all the kind of wild green spaces he used to play in until there's almost nothing of it left. That's essentially my childhood. So I grew up right on the edge of Melbourne in North Ringwood. In front of my house, there was suburb, and behind it there was bush. So we were literally at the very edge of town. And I was the first kid to live in the first house in the first street of a brand new development.
Right.
And over years, yes, it was demolished all around me. So, and even to the point where we once ventured up way beyond where we should do into paddocks and things and found an old house that was abandoned. We had to crawl through an old hedge and there was an old abandoned tennis court in an old house. We were always too terrified to go in, and I suppose this story is what if there were kids who weren't too terrified to go in. There's a theme of the kind of, and it's in the cover, which is my favourite thing. I love this cover. So the theme of the kind of the town above, which is safe and secure but not very interesting, and the orchard below, which might be exciting and mysterious but not necessarily safe. And how do you synthesize those two things? How do you have both of those worlds, or can you?
Yeah.
Can you even have it? And all of that comes to one decision at the end of the book where someone has to decide which stays and which goes.
Yeah. You said it's had quite a lot of book club support.
It has, yeah.
What are some of the things you've heard from kids? What are the things that you've had some feedback on?
I ask them, actually a question I ask everybody, and I write it into quite, if you've got a copy of this, it's almost certainly written in the front of this book, is, are you a bird or a squid? And that's something that Slotcar asks. She talks about squids and she talks about birds. And birds for her are people who are big and like to make a big noise of themselves. They're colourful, exactly. They want attention. They might be very effective people who get a lot done, but they do it out and proud. Squids are under the surface. They stay down low. They're very quiet. You know, if you get too close to them, a jet of ink comes out and you never even saw them. But they do things under the surface. And so a lot of my characters are deciding in the book effectively, are you a bird or a squid? Yeah.
And, you know, I don't know if this is something that's a big deal or not, but I do really like it that Pri and his family are Indian, but that's not what the story is about.
I get asked about this occasionally, but not as much as I thought I would, to be honest. I could have written the family to look like my family, could easily have done that. But The outer suburbs don't necessarily look like that anymore. I have one of my oldest friends was born on the same day as me in the same year. We're 16 hours apart, I think it is. He'll understand when he gets to my age. And he comes from an Eurasian background, Indian and I think German on the other side. But so he and I grew up together, had the same experiences, the same outer suburban stuff. And in the end, we're almost exactly the same person. We finish each other's sentences now, even decades later. So I just think, having talked to him about it and what it was like being that kind of, when I asked him, what's it like being a person of colour in the 80s? And he went, what?
Yeah.
We were the same guy.
Yeah, that's right.
So I did do a lot of talking to people and a lot of research about it, but in the end, and that's the only reason I felt comfortable writing that story. In the end, I just didn't want everybody to be this. Because there's so much of this in children's books.
Absolutely.
There's plenty of it.
It does matter. It is important to create that kind of diversity.
I hope I've done a good job of it. It's not really my place to decide in the end. But
well, your friend read it, didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. Got
Has
thumbs
he?
up from
I
him.
hope he has. You better have.
What's his
Dan.
name?
Dan, have you read my
Dan.
book? I'm coming for you, Dan.
So, look, along with you, Dan, everyone else out there should read this book. I really loved it. I've literally just finished reading it, and I think that it's probably okay to say that you are working on a...
I am. I can say that I'm working on a kind of standalone prequel, I have to say. So Attica Stone here came to Dunn's Orchard, and at the end of this book, she is forced to tell the story of how she got here, why she's in this town, because no one asks her all the way through. She just shows up and people start doing what she
He
says.
asked her a couple of times, doesn't he? Who the hell are you?
Who are you?
How did you appear here?
Yeah, and she never really answers, but at
No.
the end she's forced to. She tells a story about a chameleon, and that story is a lie. And I only realised that after this book was printed, published and out.
Correct.
And I started thinking about what I was going to do next. And I don't know why Attica Stone was sent to Dunn's Orchard. And so this book is a way for me to force her to tell the truth.
And for you to find out.
Yeah, I'll find out if I go along, you know.
Yeah.
And it's so far, I'm about halfway through it. And so far, she's defying me. But I'm wrestling her to the ground. And I will lose that fight. Absolutely 100%.
Yeah, I can see why she's...
Don't believe this next book. It will be a crock of lies.
She's a great character. I can't wait to read about her.
Yeah.
So 2020.
Early 2020.
Yep.
Yeah, so it's a little bit of a gap, but I really hadn't planned on doing a series. So this has come across just as a kind of joyful extra thing.
Yeah.
So I've got a second book and there may even be more after that, but we'll see how we go.
I'm really glad. Good. Thanks so much for coming into the
It
studio,
is
my kitchen. I did provide
Joy.
banana bread.
This studio is very convincing. It looks so much like a house. Yeah, I don't know. I want to know who dresses it because
Yeah, that's
it's
right. It's
fantastic.
very authentic.
Oh, well, that was Matt Larkin. Thank you very much, Sally. What a guy.
Yeah, really nice to chat with him.
And this is his book. This is The Orchard Underground by Matt Larkin, and it's doing great things. So why don't you get out there and check it out? Why not? Okay, it brings us to the end of another wonderful Kidlit Club episode. Thank you to Matt, and also thank you to Sally Rippon herself. The roving Rippon report was a beauty, and I'm hoping for more Rippon reports.
I'm loving doing them, so as long as you want them, I'll keep them coming.
Good to know. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.